Welcome to the Everyman Tales. I'm so glad that you joined me today. I am Everyman, and I'm going to be your storyteller. And these stories are intended for bedtime, road trips, adventures, family time, and every time in between. They're intended for any age and every mind. Get ready to engage your imagination. Get ready for the Everyman Tales. Ben would always come to the Cape when the weather was like this. The sun was warm upon his face. He could tell by the sound of the waves below that the ocean was just barely rough enough to make up a little bit of a surf. Not make big waves at all, but it was perfect. The wind had a slight warm breeze. And as he sat at the bench at the edge of the Cape, he just felt right with the world. Ben smelled the freshness of the pine and the spruce as the wind wafted up, as the heat began to bring the smells up the hillside to his nose. Once in a while, he thought he could hear the brush of a bird's wings as it took off or landed in the trees nearby. He would lean back, think about better days, and think about his past, and dream about his future. Ben had a lot to think about ever since he'd lost his vision. You see, Ben is blind, but that doesn't mean that as the sun began to set into the ocean, he couldn't go sit on the bench and enjoy that experience just as much as anyone with sight could. And he did that every time the Cape felt this way, smelled this way, and in his mind looked this way. He sat on the bench, and as the wind began to blow in a slightly different direction, he was convinced that in the trees behind him he could hear children laughing. There were faint sounds, almost giggles, but he knew, after years of having his hearing become more sensitive to compensate for his loss of vision, he knew that there were children behind him, somewhere, playing in the trees. Ben grabbed his walking stick, stood, carefully maneuvered around the edge of the bench back onto the trail, and started to make his way back to the parking lot. Of course, Ben did not drive himself there. He was brought there by a friend who would wait at the beach parking at the bottom of the hill and come to the top of the Cape to pick up Ben when he received the phone call. Ben slowly walked the trail with his walking stick, first hitting the hedge on the left, then hitting the edge on the right. Left, right, left, right. Slowly he made his way down the trail, brushing his walking stick against the hedge. Left, right. He moved his stick to the left, but there was no hedge. Through a series of waves and lengthening and stretching and short steps, Ben was able to discern that there had become an opening in the hedge. He was convinced that it was not there before. Of course, he would have known it. He would have felt it with his walking stick on his way to the bench. The hedge had been solid on both sides, all the way from the parking lot to the bench. But now, something or someone had opened the hedge. He leaned his walking stick against one part of the hedge at its opening and felt with his hands the way that it curved inwards towards the forest. He took his walking stick and slowly made his way into the forest. It wasn't long before he reached an open area with no underbrush, and he felt tree limbs the likes of which he had never felt before. First, they brushed against the outside of his hands and felt solid as nails, and he drew his hand back and felt the pinpricks. He wasn't sure what it was. He waved his stick, his walking stick, in front of him. It was as if they had run into solid steel. The tree limbs did not move. He could tell by process of elimination, as he moved his walking stick, that there was an opening, and he could make his way to the trunk of the tree. He had never experienced anything like this in all of his trips to the Cape before. He made his way into the trunk of the tree and found where the limbs, which were steel-like at their ends, became not soft, but smooth, welcoming to the touch of his hand as they met the trunk, without any bark or pitch. It was as if they had been crafted to be climbed. Ben knew better than to do that, but he did stay there at the base of the tree, feeling it. And as the wind began to blow in the same direction it did earlier, he heard it. Up in the tree, there was giggling and laughing of children. He wanted to climb the tree so badly, but he knew, without vision, people perish, and he did not want to perish. So he stayed there at the base of the tree and listened to the laughter. After a short season, he began to feel emotionally full, like he had not felt in years. Truth be told, he hadn't felt it since he lost his vision. But here he was, listening to the laughter of children, feeling the welcoming texture of the base of the tree, and he began to weep. Ben was experiencing joy simply by the sound and environment that he was taking in. He grabbed his walking stick, grabbed one tree limb, and then another one that was higher, and slowly began to walk the stair-step tree limbs up the tree. He knew he wouldn't be able to go far, but he wanted to see if he could find the children. He called out to them, "Hey! Hello?" To no avail, there was no answer. But he did notice something with every time he lifted himself higher. The laughter became louder. He lifted himself, limb after limb, careful to make sure he stayed near the trunk, not moving toward the edges of the limbs, and holding his walking stick in his hand. Soon, he found himself in the middle of the children's laughter. He began to laugh himself and laugh and laugh. You know when you hear someone laughing and it just makes you laugh? You don't even know what they're laughing about. Ben experienced that type of euphoria in the tree that he had found off the trail. He laughed until he cried. It was then that he realized that he was starting to feel a little bit cool. That must be evidence of the fact that the sun was declining below the sunset, and he decided it was time to climb out of the tree. Slowly and methodically, step down, reach down, step down, reach down, all the way to the base of the tree. He took out his phone as he made his way back to the trail and called his friend who was waiting for him. After he found the gravel under his feet, he took his walking stick and turned around to make sure he was directly beside the opening. As he swung the walking stick around, it whacked into a solid hedge. He slowly moved it to the left and right. There was no opening. The hedge had closed. Ben, however, knew exactly what to do. Starting his walk back to the parking lot, he counted his steps. 1, 2, 3. All the way up to 88 steps until he met the parking lot's pavement. Ben may not ever find the opening for the tree off the trail again, but he knew exactly how many steps it would take to get him to where the opening should be. You've been listening to the Everyman Tales. Thank you for tuning in as we continue our ongoing story about the tree off the trail. If you enjoyed the podcast, feel free to like my Facebook page, follow me on whatever platform you're listening to me on, and be sure to tune in next time as we engage our imagination here at the Everyman Tales. Thanks for listening.